special being of calamity, the Demon Lord, has been reborn. A woman stood from her throne and declared that the time to face humans had finally come. From that moment on, they were at war with every human nation, and with their power, they would show the world the true supreme ruler of the continent. The monsters expressed their excitement, and with a final command, she led them out to begin their conquest. In a quiet room, a girl sat comfortably in a VR chair, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. In this world, virtual reality has become an essential part of life, influencing everything from healthcare to entertainment. One particular game had just announced the early access of its open beta, Booth Our Shoot Curse, an MMORPG created by a famous developer and has the appearance of a typical fantasy RPG but with a twist. There were no levels or professions, though players could still earn experience points. Looking at her player screen, the girl went by the in-game name Rare and began to customize her character. She chose the elf race, which automatically consumed 20 XP due to its natural beauty trait and left her with half of her XP gone. She noted that these inner traits didn't exist in the previous test. In this game, players received 100 XP when they started, which you could freely use to build your character however you wanted. She also noticed that some negative traits, like albinism and poor eyesight, actually gave her XP. Thinking strategically, she decided to take them and just choose a spawn point later where these negative traits wouldn't be a problem. Players usually had the option to spawn in one of 6 human-controlled countries. However, choosing to play as a monster like a goblin or skeleton would mean immediate trouble with human forces. To avoid this, you could spawn in the monster territory outside of the human lands, inside a cave that looks like designed for skeletons. Rare has spawned and thought the cave's darkness would protect her from the sun, which was harmful due to her albinism, though her poor eyesight made seeing far distances difficult. She mused over the game's mechanics, realizing that the system treated players and NPCs the same, except that players could receive system messages. It also mentioned that there's no difference between NPCs and monsters. As she explored the place, she heard voices and discovered a group of beast girls enjoying a meal. She stayed hidden and watched them closely, surprised to find humanoid characters in demon territory. One of the beast girls stood up and walked in her direction. Realizing she had no choice, Rare quickly knocked the girl out, shocking the rest of them. Seeing their reaction, Rare took the opportunity and went for the attack. One beast girl called out for their fallen friend, unable to react as Rare swiftly incapacitated another one. The girl was furious, but Rare was too fast and struck her by the chin. Rare then went for the last beast girl, grabbing her clothes and slamming her into the ground. In a matter of seconds, she incapacitated the 4 beast girls, glad that her martial arts skills she learned at home came in handy. Looking at them, she wondered if they were bandits but decided against killing them just for experience points. She then looked at her player screen and was surprised at the XP she had gained. It was 3 times what she had started with. Believing NPCs won't spawn if they died, she decided to spare them and then put them in a good use. When the beast girls regained consciousness, Rare introduced herself and stated she was an elf. She asked them to tell her who their leader was, and after some hesitation, one of the girls, Carrie, spoke up slowly with a rude tone. Rare reprimanded her, and the girl scaredly explained she was never taught how to speak. Hearing this, Rare apologized and corrected her, reminding the girl that it would get her in trouble. Rare then asked why they were living in the cave, prompting the girl to look in discomfort. She explained that their village had fallen on hard times because of the expanding monster territory. The adults had decided to sell her and her friends, so they ran away themselves. To survive, they stole from nearby villages, killing anyone who caught them in the act. 5 years had passed since they left the village. They were roaming around the forest to avoid people, and had just found this cave this morning. Listening to her story, Rare was not surprised it was a sad one. But for an NPC, she was amazed at how detailed it was and wondered if the game was developed long before the beta test. The game world felt incredibly real and was more like an alternate reality with AIs than a typical game. In any case, she decided to focus first on the girls, realizing they had great survival skills even in such a pitiful state. She knew it would be a waste to kill them just for the experience points, so she decided to help them instead. Rare stood up and told the girls that while they had done well to survive, continuing on their current path would eventually lead to disaster, leaving them speechless. The girls looked at each other, and Carrie argued that they had no choice. They couldn't live in any village because they were known as bandits, so they had to steal to survive. Rare understood, and she saw an opportunity to teach them about the world and how the economy works, giving them a chance to turn their lives around. After several hours of explaining, the girls were left in awe and couldn't believe how knowledgeable and kind Rare was. As she watched the girls look at her with admiration, she insisted that she wasn't particularly kind and simply enjoyed explaining things to others. However, Carrie shared that in her village, she had been beaten whenever she asked questions she didn't understand, leaving Rare to sympathize with them even more. Hearing this, Carrie blurted out that Rare really has a kind heart, prompting the other girls to nod in agreement as they came to a conclusion. All of a sudden, Carrie begged and asked Rare to be their boss, surprising her, followed by an error message saying she doesn't have the required subordinate skill to tame her. Confused, she wondered how it was even possible to tame an NPC, especially since Carrie wasn't a monster, but a humanoid character. She had been playing since the closed beta and had never heard of a taming skill for NPCs. She mused over the possibility that only a few players might know about this. Realizing something, Carrie noticed her hesitation and asked if she was refusing their request. Rare quickly reassured her that she wasn't and just needed some time to think things over. She reminded the girls about their meal and started untying the ropes she had used to restrain them. As the girls continued to eat, Rare took the opportunity to check her player screen. She was curious to see if she could find a subordinate skill in her skill tree. However, she realized that the skill wasn't visible anywhere, speculating that it might be a hidden skill, one that required a specific combination of other skills to unlock. She considered various possibilities like mental magic, which had skills such as stupefy, charm, and fear, and could potentially lead to a control skill. She calculated that going down that route would cost her at least 150 experience points. Another possibility was the combination of summon and discipline, though she noted that neither of these had a visible skill tree inside them. She also pondered whether necromancy, which had a soul subordinating effect, might be related. But again, necromancy lacked a skill tree either. Looking at those three skills, Rare noticed their similarities, and she suddenly thought of something. She decided to acquire them all first, but nothing happened immediately. Undeterred, she considered that the key might lie in mental magic, and even if she was wrong, being a specialized mental magician would still be useful. As she unlocked the skills under mental magic, a new skill called Bind Soul suddenly appeared under necromancy, confirming her suspicion that unlocking both the mental magic and necromancy skill trees was the key. This realization opened up new possibilities, and she eagerly searched for more hidden skills. Sure enough, under the summon tree, a new skill called Contract appeared, a skill that would forge a contract with the soul of a successfully summoned target. Rare knew she was on the right track, and finally, she saw the subordinate skill appeared under discipline. She quickly bought the skill without hesitation, accepting Carrie as her subordinate. Carrie instantly felt a change within her, while Rare apologized for keeping them waiting. Considering the amount of experience points needed to do it, she couldn't help but feel a thrill at being the first player to unlock such a rare skill. Feeling excited, Rare declared that they were now all her underlings, in name and reality. She then led the girls out of the cave, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After Rare used subordinate skill on each of the beast girls, a notification popped up on her screen saying that the Mountain Cat Bandit group had been defeated. She was shocked and hadn't realized that they weren't just ordinary NPCs, but were actually unique bosses. This revelation made her reconsider their strength, though she found it hard to believe as she looked at their innocent, cute faces. She began to wonder how she could accurately measure their strength, while Kerr interrupted her and asked what their next move would be. Thinking about it, Rare decided to lead them outside into the forest. Singing as they walked, Carrie stopped and wondered why they were going hunting, to which the other girl reminded her that Rare had already explained their mission. Seeing this scene, Rare found Carrie's forgetfulness amusing. She wondered if Carrie's absent-mindedness was a natural trait or if it had something to do with her in-game stats. She thought of raising her intelligence stats to see if it made a difference, but Marion suddenly stopped the group. She explained she had detected the presence of wolves and the scent of blood nearby, and the girls quickly realized that danger was close. Before Rare could even suggest a plan, Carrie reassured her as the said wolf had already found them, a massive wolf towering over them. Rare was stunned by its size, but before she could react, Carrie already led everyone and took charge. Watching them behind the bush, she was surprised as the mood around them shifted. They were no longer the cheerful group she had just been with. They were now experienced fighters, well-versed in handling such situations. Carrie, as the leader and main attacker, wielded a sword and acted as a tank, protecting her comrades. Remy, who specialized in short-range weapons and archery, supported the group from both the front and the rear. Riley, with her enhanced vision and Hawkeye abilities, provided long-range support with her bow, while Marion, using her heightened sense of smell and ability to conceal her presence, disturbed the enemy's tactics. The fight against the wolf was intense. She watched Carrie parry the wolf's attack and signaled Riley to draw her bow. As the arrow traveled towards it, the wolf's powerful roar easily deflected the attack. This made Rare realize that the situation was becoming dire. Watching anxiously, she decided it was time to intervene and quickly strengthen her mind stats using her experience points. Determined to test her own abilities, Rare began by casting Stupefy on the wolf, successfully stunning the beast. She then instructed the girls to hold their attack while using Charm followed by Control. When she felt no resistance from it, she activated the subordinate skill, effectively taming the massive wolf. She realized that by mastering mental magic, she could control even hostile opponents. Carrie was amazed, but Rare humbly acknowledged that the girls had also played a crucial role in the battle. As she checked her player screen to see how much XP the girls had earned, she was shocked to discover that Carrie had gained nothing. This made her wonder if the subordinate skill was designed to collect the experience points earned by underlings, which she could then redistribute as she saw fit. Her thoughts were interrupted by Carrie, who had found boar meat hunted by the wolf. Rare agreed to take it back and placed it in her inventory, leaving Carrie in shock and asked how she had done it. Overwhelmed by Carrie's reaction, Rare attempted to explain the concept of the game's inventory system, but it was clear that Carrie didn't quite grasp the idea as an NPC, so she promised to properly teach it to her later. Their conversation was cut short when Rare noticed the wolf looking in a particular direction. Following its gaze, they discovered a cave that appeared to be the wolf's home, and were surprised to see it return with 6 small wolf pups. Rare was thrilled and realized that the wolf wasn't a lone creature after all. Suddenly, a system message appeared asking her if she wanted to tame the ice wolf together with the 6 pups, surprising her that she could tame them all at once. Without hesitation, she welcomed them into her family, while the wolves happily licked her face in return. After learning they don't have a name, she named the biggest wolf Hakuma, and each of the pups their own names. Making sure that no one was left out, a shadowy figure suddenly emerged from the back, revealing itself to be an ant monster. Rare asked Hakuma if the ant was a friend, but the wolf's strong reaction indicated otherwise. Realizing something, Rare instructed the girls to catch it before it could escape, prompting Riley to quickly fire her arrows and block the exit. Carrie questioned the need to catch the ant and pointed out that its hard shell made it ineatable, but Rare had other plans. She intended to tame the ant, envisioning how its abilities could be used to build a base and enhance their combat effectiveness. As she was lost in thought, the ant suddenly launched an attack, forcing Rare to dodge in time. The attack was so powerful that it melted part of the cave wall, making Rare realize that her plan was more dangerous than she had anticipated. Thinking quickly, Rare decided to use the experience points she had gained from taming Hakuma and gave Marion a new skill. The girl felt a sudden change, and was surprised when Rare explained that she was now able to use magic. Just as the ant was about to attack her from behind, Carrie warned her, so Marion instinctively raised her hand, unleashing a blast of ice that froze the ant in its tracks. The other girls were stunned and couldn't believe what she had done. On the other hand, Marion was equally surprised and wondered if it's the power Rare had given her. Rare confirmed and proudly demonstrated she could also raise their stats. She then explained that she increased their intelligence, asking them if they were able to grasp more of what she was trying to accomplish. As they thought about it, Carrie excitedly confirmed, prompting Rare to wonder if she should continue increasing their intelligence from now on. She then explained that she would give them more powers if they worked hard for her, to which the girls all responded enthusiastically. Rare then turned her attention to the frozen ant. She had originally intended to use the subordinate skill, but with the ant encased in ice, she worried that it might not work. Hearing this, Carrie politely intervened and asked why does it matter if the ant was frozen, suggesting she should try it first. Shocked by this realization, Rare was impressed by Carrie's sharp thinking, realizing that the increase in intelligence stats had made her even smarter than her. Following Carrie's advice, Rare attempted to use the subordinate skill. However, an error message appeared, informing her that the ant had already been tamed by another character. This information led Rare to conclude that the ant was likely part of a larger group, possibly under the control of a queen ant. She explained the situation to the girls and decided that she would need to venture deeper into the cave to find the queen alone as the path was small. Worried for her safety, Carrie insisted that she should at least go with another person to protect her, prompting the girls to volunteer themselves one by one. In the end, they all squeezed into the narrow passage, except for Hakama, who was too big to fit inside. Rare found herself overwhelmed by the number of opinions being thrown her way, realizing that this was likely due to the recent increase in their intelligence. After navigating through the passage, they finally reached a small, open space within the cave. Marion then used her enhanced senses and detected a large number of enemies nearby, prompting Rare to instruct her to prepare her freezing magic. As the ants emerged from the dark one by one, they realized it was an ambush, but Rare wasn't going to lose. She quickly used her charm skill and signaled Marion to unleash her spell. The result was highly effective, freezing all the ants in the room and causing the temperature to drop significantly. Shivering from the cold, Rare praised Marion for her excellent work and wondered where the queen was. Suddenly, a loud screeching sound echoed from one of the cave holes, sending tension through everyone. Emerging from the dark is a massive ant, the queen they were searching for. The ant queen started squealing, prompting Rare to immediately be on high alert. She decided to go for the first move, casting Stupefy followed by Control. Unfortunately, a system message appeared indicating that her attempts had failed, much to her shock. She then signaled to Marion, who wasted no time and raised her hands to cast her magic, freezing the Ant Queen's limbs in place temporarily. Rare then exclaimed that her mental magic had a cooldown, urging Carrie and the others to buy her some time. Rare placed her hand on the ground, summoning a magic circle to call Hakama and Ginka for more help. Everyone launched a coordinated attack, catching the Ant Queen off guard as she was pinned to the ground by Hakama. Just as Rare's skill cooldown ended, she decided to try her mental magic once more. And this time, the Ant Queen couldn't resist and then calmed down instantly. Rare then walked towards her, urging her to be her underling using the subordinate skill. The taming was successful, so she immediately introduced her as their new ally. Carrie asked if she had a name, to which Rare responded that it was too long. She pondered for a moment before deciding on a simpler name, renaming her as Suguru. The Vespoid Queen nodded in acknowledgement, while she also realized she gained control over the other ants as well. Asking for a reward, Carrie suddenly reminded her of a promise she had made earlier, asking her about the inventory system. Rare was a bit surprised that Carrie remembered it. She then told her to just imagine an invisible bag to move things in and out, but Carrie struggled to grasp the concept. As Rare concluded that it's impossible for NPCs to use the inventory system, she was shocked to see Hakama casually put a skull inside the inventory. Before she could process what was happening, she also heard Marion able to use it effortlessly. This unexpected turn of events made Rare question everything she knew. She wondered if NPCs and even monsters could access functions previously thought to be exclusive to players, recalling the system message from the tutorial. Realizing it was real, she watched as the other girls tried to figure out the inventory system. She wondered why Marion and Hakuma could use it immediately after her explanation, while Carrie and the others couldn't. Thinking of something, Rare called out to Carrie, who thought she would be scolded after not being able to do it. Rare assured her and explained she would lend help. She then increased her intelligence stat and urged her to try again. And this time, she successfully accessed the inventory system, much to her joy. This confirmed Rare's theory that NPCs needed a high intelligence stat to use the inventory. With this new understanding, she boosted Remy and Riley's intelligence stats as well and asked Carrie to teach them herself. Under Carrie's guidance, the girls managed to do it too, showing that NPCs could also teach each other. She then instructed Carrie to teach Suguru next, and although Suguru learned how to use the inventory, Carrie exclaimed that the lack of communication posed a challenge, to which Rare agreed. Suddenly, a new thought crossed Rare's mind. If NPCs could use the inventory, she wondered if they could also use the friend chat. She decided to test it by asking Suguru to add her to her friends list, leaving the ant confused. Realizing she also doesn't know how to do it herself, she muttered excuses to herself why she didn't have one single friend. She then looked at her player screen and just learned that adding a friend required you to put the friend's card into your inventory, almost similar to exchanging business cards in real life. She then handed Suguru hers and instructed her to put it in her inventory. The moment Suguru did so, Rare was bombarded by her loud voice, indicating that the process was successful. Rare was pleased that they could now communicate no matter how far apart they were, and they could also use it to discuss things in secret, which could be very useful in the future. As Rare pondered the many possibilities in this game, she marveled at the freedom it offered and began to wonder if it was possible to tame other players as well, which would allow her to collect all their experience points. She imagined herself as a princess, sitting on a throne with her subordinates, bringing her all their hard-earned experience, likening it to a princess play in gaming. She considered the need to test this theory, but quickly realized she didn't know any other players. However, if she could increase the intelligence of her NPCs, they could become even more effective than average players. She then contemplated raising them into 4 wise heavenly kings. But to do that, she needed more experience points and decided to make use of Suguru's subordinates. Once Suguru's LP and MP were recovered, they could produce more ants, who would then save up experience points to acquire more skills. Rare envisioned taking control of the entire forest and building a base in the cave, with grand plans forming in her mind while the girls watched cluelessly. Meanwhile, in the town of Hires, another player was wandering the streets. With a player named Wayne, and also a participant in the closed beta, he thought of preparing for a big commemorative event. He contemplated finding a companion to play with, feeling that facing the challenges ahead alone might be too difficult. As he entered the Adventurers Guild, someone called out to him, catching his attention. The man seemed to recognize him as a safe holder, a term that caught Wayne off guard. The man explained that safe holders typically didn't travel alone, and it was unusual to see one by themselves. As Wayne wondered if he was referring to an inventory, the man mentioned seeing another lone safe holder yesterday. Hearing this, Wayne was intrigued and thought that she must be another solo player like himself. Just as the man continued talking, he then stopped as he saw the girl he was referring to. It was Carrie. She approached the man and handed him the spoils of her latest hunt, pulling the slain monster from her inventory. Wayne watched in alarm and noted that Carrie's actions were typical of a player rather than an NPC. He then struck up a conversation and asked if she was a player, but quickly realized he was being rude. He introduced himself first and asked for her name, causing Carrie to smile a little. She then confirmed she was a player and introduced herself as Rare instead. Booth Hour Shoot Curse official service had just launched, bringing with it a large-scale event that would be held at a later date. Wayne and Carrie found themselves deep in a forest, pursuing an ant monster together. Carrie went for the slash while Wayne casted a flame arrow, easily defeating the monster. Carrie apologized for making him join in her gathering mission, but he assured her that he didn't mind as he also needed supplies for the upcoming event, much to Carrie's curiosity. Wayne reminded her of the big event to celebrate the official launch, and Carrie, being an NPC, wasn't aware of the details, so she just tried to play along. He suddenly invited her to join him, but Carrie was unsure of how to respond to such an unexpected invitation. She told him she would think about it, leaving him slightly disappointed but hopeful. Meanwhile, Rare observed this exchange from her throne, hidden deep within the cave that served as their base. Using her newly acquired skills, Summon Hearing and Summon Vision, she could now share the senses of her followers, allowing her to remotely see and hear everything through them. She had tasked Carrie with gathering information from a nearby town, and Carrie seemed to be blending in well with the players so far. Rare noted how players distinguished between each other and NPCs based on whether or not they could use the inventory system, prompting Suguru to raise a concern about Carrie being seen as an NPC who could use the inventory. However, Rare wasn't worried as there's almost no difference between NPCs and players appearance-wise. And the only way they would discover Carrie as an NPC is if they found another player with the same name. The game didn't allow players to have the same name, and since Carrie was using the name Rare, there was little risk of her being exposed unless Rare herself went public. Suguru understood and then reported that all patrol squads had confirmed there were no issues. As Rare walked through the hallways of their base, she reflected on the progress they had made. In just a week, she had successfully taken control of the vast forest, using the ants to expand their underground space and establish a solid base of operations. On the surface, Rare removed obstacles like other monsters and humans, and the ant surveillance network allowed them to monitor the forest at all times. Thanks to their hard work, Rare had accumulated a massive amount of experience points, which she had used to acquire powerful new skills like Summon Vision and Summon Hearing. Now, she felt confident that nothing in the forest could stand against her, though she still wasn't too keen on participating in the large-scale event. Suddenly, Riley called her out urgently, reporting that they were facing a hostile opponent. A sudden army of skeletons had appeared out of nowhere. Rare was shocked by the news, especially since Suguru's followers hadn't detected any signs of the approaching army. It seemed the skeletons had slipped through the ant surveillance, leaving Rare completely puzzled. Suguru then asked what they should do, and Rare quickly instructed Riley to lead the ants, installing the skeletons to prevent any damage. She promised to join them soon while she marveled at the idea of an army of skeletons. Arriving at the scene, Rare saw the ants successfully stalled the skeletons. She apologized to Riley for the delay and then instructed everyone to step back, saying she wanted to test a new skill on the undead. Raising her arm, she casted Necromantic Barrier, covering all the skeletons with a magical barrier. The skeletons began to rattle and then froze in place, successfully putting them under her control. She was amazed at the range of the skill, although it only worked on the undead. As she tried commanding the skeletons to line up, the ants suddenly charged their attacks and fired at a location. Amused that she had missed someone, another skeleton emerged from the smoke, clearly different from the others. It then screamed loudly, furious at what Rare had done to its comrades, and seemed to blame her for something that had happened to their king. Rare was confused and had no idea what the skeleton was talking about. She apologized for defeating his followers without a proper discussion and tried to offer to talk things out. Despite her efforts, the skeleton ignored her and went for the attack, though it immediately stopped as it felt her unusual presence. Rare calmly repeated herself, noting that even if he was strong, he couldn't take on all the ants surrounding him. Seeing the skeleton listen this time, Rare offered him 3 options. First, he could leave the forest and go wherever it wanted. Second, he could join her and become one of her followers, where she would grant it power and even help him seek revenge if needed. And the third, she could destroy him right then and there, terrifying the monster. After a moment, she received a notification and was glad by his decision. She was able to tame a named enemy that night, and with their problem solved, she instructed her followers to retreat and return to their base. Afterwards, the system announced that the required number of simultaneous user connections had been confirmed, triggering the start of the large-scale event. However, as the program tried to launch, an error occurred and prevented it from running properly. The system issued a warning that some event characters were unavailable, prompting the section leaders to confer and formulate a response. A few days later, on the day of the large-scale event, an ant inquired about Rare's whereabouts, to which Carrie explained that she had gone to some event, mentioning that she changed her plans and decided to participate. Marion expressed concern about her attending without them, but Carrie reassured her that Kinzaki and Yoroizaka were with her. At the city stadium, a massive crowd gathered to watch the event. The announcer then introduced the first official large-scale event, a battle royale among all the players. The participants would be divided into 32 blocks to compete in the qualifying rounds. The 32 survivors would face off in the finals, and the winner would receive a wonderful prize. At the qualifying round for Block 16, players were stunned as a figure destroyed a slam another tree into the ground. Looking at its full body armor, the figure started eliminating them one by one. It swung an entire tree trunk with ease, taking out multiple opponents at once. Watching the scene, someone attempted to attack with arrows, but the figure effortlessly blocked and caught it, throwing it back to eliminate the target. The remaining players were shocked and started running away in horror as they realized they were no match to it. Unfortunately for them, the figure was too fast as it slammed the other man into a tree, eliminating him on the spot. The figure spoke and acknowledged that it was wise for them to flee when they recognized they couldn't win. Even so, it didn't matter where they ran. Rare declared they would all eventually fall to the power of her new subordinates. Rare had just finished the qualifying round for Block 16, easily defeating all the participants. It had been almost too easy for her, and as she stood in her full black armor, she thought about how fast the round had ended. It was only the qualifying stage, so she hadn't put in too much effort. As the system announced that the qualifying round was over, all participants were teleported to the spectator area. Rare immediately attracted attention from the large crowd. People in the stands began whispering about the mysterious Black Knight who had dominated Block 16. Some wondered how someone could obtain such powerful full-body armor in only 2 weeks, while others speculated that she might be an event boss created by the game staff. Watching the crowd's reaction, Rare realized that she had unintentionally become the center of attention. All she had wanted to do was test the abilities of her new subordinates, Yoroizaka and Kinzaki, but now all eyes were on her, leaving her slightly annoyed. Her mind wandered back to the time before this event. Diaz had approached her while she was working on something. She had explained that she still had some experience points left after strengthening everyone's stats, so she decided to experiment. She wanted to see if she could create a homunculus, a life form created through alchemy, and also one of the starting races you could choose to play with. Knowing that Suguru is creating new NPCs with her skill, Rare believed there's also a way for her to imitate it. She had gotten so many skills in the alchemy tree, but the required ingredients weren't fully revealed to her yet, so she shifted to a different plan. She had decided to test a recipe that she knew the ingredients even if the results were hidden. One recipe she had seen required Knight's Grudge and a lump of metal. She then realized they had gathered items from the graveyard where Diaz was found. She decided to try using the rusty armor and a sword. For the lump of metal, she used a high-quality ore mined from their base. Rare had then cast Magnum Opus, and what appeared before her was a full set of black armor with swords floating around it. The egg's appearance had changed, and it didn't look like a simple weapon. She tried to use her subordinate skill on it, and had learned that they are living armor and living weapon. She successfully tamed both and named the swords Kenzaki Goru, while she called the full-body armor Yoroizaka. Back in the present, Rare realized she didn't get to see the full extent of Yoroizaka's power in the qualifying round, while the system announced that the finals would begin in 30 seconds, and all the qualified players would be teleported to the next stage. Rare was eager to see who among the remaining players would be a worthy challenge for her. She hoped to encounter some strong opponents this time. One of the players is a man who used to get sick a lot in his childhood. He spent much of his years under the care of an AI nurse at a VR clinic, and because of that, he became obsessed with nurses so much it had carried over into the game, where he always wore a nurse's uniform. Over time, a rumor spread that no one could ever stain his pristine uniform. Because of this, he had earned the nickname Nurse Yoichi. As Yoichi surveyed the grassland where he had been teleported, he used his skill Eagle's Eye to assess his surroundings. He noticed a forest ahead and a lake in the distance. He then decided to hide in the forest and wait for his next prey, but just then, a ninja-like player appeared in front of him, recognizing him as the famous archer who's always wearing nurse uniform. Yoichi dismissed it and exclaimed his achievements had just been blown out of proportion, while the guy argued that he was able to detect his presence, so the rumors might be true. Yoichi then responded that he just considered himself a stoic archer, and someone of his caliber wouldn't be able to penetrate his defenses so easily. Hearing this, the guy angrily accused him of being anything but stoic, given his nurse uniform. Before the fight could escalate, both of them were suddenly cut down in an instant. Rare had appeared and eliminated them both effortlessly, disturbed by their odd appearances. The ninja hadn't bothered her much, but Yoichi's nurse uniform and his leg hair had been too much for her to handle, leading her to kill them impulsively. As Rare tried to shake the unsettling memory from her mind, she sensed danger, and her location was suddenly hit with explosions. She was able to dodge and realized that she was being attacked from the woods. She guessed that there were multiple players targeting her. Rather than chasing them down one by one, she opted for a more direct approach. Rare unleashed her fire magic and burned down the entire forest. The hiding players were forced out into the open, barely able to defend themselves against the powerful attack. One of the mages among them realized how close they had been to death, noting that if they had been any closer, they wouldn't have survived. The players were shocked to discover that Rare, whom they had thought to be a close combat specialist, was actually a mage. As Rare approached them slowly, the group panicked and realized that she was the most dangerous opponent they had faced. Deciding that they needed to work together to defeat her, the mages launched a combined attack with Thunderbolt. To their shock, Rare simply stood there and took the attack without suffering any damage. Desperate, the warriors charged in with their swords and axes, but their weapons were just as useless against Rare's black armor. In a swift motion, Rare grabbed two of the players by the head and crushed them, instantly defeating them. Seeing all of this, a girl slumped to the ground in defeat, while one of her comrades stood in front of her trying to protect her. He expressed his frustration and exclaimed how anyone could possibly win against such an opponent like her. On the other hand, Rare slain them mercilessly, followed by a voice that the finals were over, declaring her as the winner. Just as Rare was processing her victory, a new message screen appeared before her, catching her by surprise. It was a message from the game management, congratulating her on her victory and requesting her cooperation for an exhibition match. The event had ended much earlier than expected, and the staff wanted to extend the excitement with a special match featuring her, leaving her stunned by this unexpected request. Wayne found himself deep in thought at the arena. He had been eliminated easily in the qualifying round, but his mind kept drifting back to Carrie, the player he had known as Rare. He hadn't seen her since the day he invited her to the event, and because they weren't registered as friends in the game, he had no way of contacting her. Suddenly, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena, declaring Rare as the winner of the event. Wayne was stunned. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. The same Rare he had known, who couldn't even defeat a few ants on her own, had just won the entire event? His disbelief grew when the announcer mentioned that a special exhibition match would take place in agreement with Rare. Everyone is free to participate, and it would be another battle royale. But if someone managed to defeat Rare, they would receive a special prize. Hearing this, players became excited while Wayne was still in shock. He couldn't wrap his mind around what was happening. Afterwards, he found himself running through the forest during the exhibition match. Suddenly, a group of players who had been eliminated earlier by Rare approached him, asking if he was also targeting her. They were determined to take her down and suggested that they team up, referring to her as the final boss. Wayne silently followed along, still trying to process everything. When they finally reached an open area, they saw the black armor figure, surrounded by players who were all working together to bring her down. The players coordinated their attacks, trying to find an opening. Archers attempted to buy time, while others planned to charge in. On the other hand, Wayne ran toward her and yelled her name. As Rare glanced at him, the players noticed it as an opening and launched their attacks. To their astonishment, Rare stood still and took all the hits without flinching. She quickly retaliated with water magic, wiping out everyone around her, including Wayne, who desperately tried to call her name. Wayne respawned back at the arena, disoriented and still in shock. The announcer declared Rare the winner of the exhibition match, and the players began discussing how tough the black armored figure had been. Some questioned whether Rare was actually a raid boss created by the game staff, given how easily she had wiped out the competition. But Wayne's thoughts were elsewhere. He was still trying to make sense if that was really Rare. Suddenly, he was interrupted by one of the players from earlier, the one who had suggested teaming up to defeat Rare. The player remarked on how Wayne had tried to talk to the winner before they were all wiped out and asked if he was a friend of his. Wayne denied it and explained that they had only hunted together a few times, but something didn't sit right with him. He was certain that the Rare he knew wasn't this strong. The guy then wondered if there was a shortcut to getting strong so quickly. He then introduced himself as Gil and offered to be his friend. He wanted to be in touch in case he discovered anything. As Wayne looked at the friend card, he realized he wouldn't know Gil's name without adding him first, much like with Rare. A few days later, after the event ended, Rare sat on her throne reading through another message from the game management. They thanked her for participating in the event and requested her permission to use footage of her battle for a promotional video. Since her face had been hidden during the fight, she saw no problem with it. Diaz suddenly arrived and noticed that she had been grinning a lot lately, to which she explained that many things had happened. She then noticed Carrie, who had been in low spirits for a while. She hadn't been herself since she started meeting with Wayne, and Rare realized that the situation was becoming problematic. She had originally sent Carrie to gather information by pretending to be a weak player, but it seemed that attacking her fellow ants had taken a toll on her. Rare thought about Wayne and how he had mistaken her for Carrie during the event. She understood that if Carrie continued to interact with him, there was a risk that she might reveal information Wayne shouldn't have. With that in mind, Rare walked towards her and exclaimed it was time for her to cut ties with Wayne. She would need to meet with him one last time to say goodbye. Later in a forest, Carrie met up with Wayne. He had been worried about her, while Carrie responded that she had been busy with real life. As they walked deeper into the woods, Carrie stopped and asked Wayne what he wanted to discuss. Remembering how kind she had been when they first met, Wayne couldn't help but notice her cold attitude now. He then mentioned how she was able to walk in the woods now, but Carrie responded it was natural since it's been 2 weeks since then and she's already gotten used to it. Hearing this, Wayne felt off about her speech, but Carrie brushed it off and claimed she had been role-playing the whole time. However, Wayne wasn't convinced and finally confronted her. He then admitted that he had a feeling she wasn't the Rare he had known, sending tension into the air. Responding to his question, Carrie dismissed it and reminded that the game checked their brainwaves first before they log in, so there's no way it could happen. However, Wayne replied that she didn't speak or act like the Rare he once knew. Realizing this, Rare, who was actually controlling Carrie's body using her new skill, tried to maintain her composure. She had been careful and avoided any strange movements, but Wayne's sharp observation about her suddenly caught her off guard. Wayne pressed on and recalled how the Rare he knew would often talk to someone through the friend chat, and asked if she was that person. Without exchanging friend cards, he had no way of verifying her real name. He started piecing together a theory, believing there were 2 players with the same appearance, one in front of him and the other, the Rare he had hunted with before. On the other hand, Rare felt excited, feeling like a cornered criminal. Wayne was getting too close to the truth, but she saw an opportunity. Instead of denying it outright, she played along with his assumptions. She pretended that there really were 2 players with the same appearance, leaving Wayne feeling a lot of emotions. Internally, Rare smirked as she knew this would keep him from discovering the truth, as long as he didn't figure out that NPCs like Carrie could use the inventory system and the friend chat. Wayne then demanded to know why she had deceived him, to which Rare explained there is no reason and she just wanted to PK. She casually revealed that during the closed beta, she would pretend to be an NPC to lure in unsuspecting players only to kill them later. Wayne couldn't believe what she was saying, and she continued and admitted she had done this numerous times, moving from city to city to avoid detection. Suddenly, Wayne's anger flared as he exclaimed that he had been one of those players, tricked and killed by her in the past. Rare was surprised to hear this, but she quickly regained her composure and mocked him for falling into her trap. She laughed at the irony of the situation, telling him that although he had been a stupid player before, he had at least grown enough to corner her now. Wayne furiously asked why she had involved Carrie's appearance in all of this, to which Rare responded coldly that she wasn't skilled at luring people, but Carrie's open and innocent personality made her the perfect pawn. She even pointed out that Wayne had been drawn to Carrie because of her charm. With her plans laid out, Rare revealed her true purpose for setting up a base in the forest. She had been using it to farm experience points by killing other players, and she had no intention of stopping. Wayne was unable to hold back his rage and vowed to put an end to her schemes. However, Rare remained unfazed and told him he would not be able to stop her. She calmly told him that it was time for them to part ways while drawing her sword, the same weapon Wayne had seen used by the Black Armor. He also reached for his own weapon, but before he could do so, Rare moved faster than he could anticipate. In one swift motion, she cut him down before he had a chance to defend himself, barely able to mutter her name as his body disintegrated. Back in her real body, Rare woke up seated comfortably on her throne. She reflected on her victory over Wayne, feeling pleased with how everything had played out. Just as she was about to relax, a new message popped up on her player screen. It was another message from the game management, likely about the promotional video they had mentioned earlier. As she read through the message, an idea began to form in her mind. A grin spread across her face. She had just thought of something brilliant. Experience a realistic adventure on a magnificent continent. NPCs and monsters with embedded high-performance AI. Collect and freely use your experience points. A reincarnation system that allows you to change classes. Endless possibilities await you. What are you waiting for? Start playing now. Meanwhile, a group of players ventured into the forest. They had heard the rumors about the high amount of experience points that could be gained there. As they walked, they noticed that the forest seemed to only have ants as enemies. One player excitedly opened a treasure box and found a powerful-looking sword. Suddenly, a large shadow appeared behind them, turning out to be a skeleton. It then swung its massive sword, and the players just barely dodged the attack. One of them was eager to test his new weapon and leaped into the air. To everyone's shock, the skeleton was far stronger and killed the player in an instant. As they looked around, they realized they were surrounded by more skeletons, and soon, the entire group was wiped out. Watching the entire scene unfold was Rare, observing through the eyes of an owl perched on a tree branch. She mused to herself, thinking that while the ants had initially drawn players to the forest, she knew they would get bored if they only had weak enemies to fight. However, Carrie pointed out how quickly the players had been crushed by the skeletons, while Riley praised Rare for how easily she was drawing players in. Thinking of everything that happened, Wayne had done exactly what she hoped. More players are now exploring the Great Liba Forest, which they now treated like a dungeon. So her plan had worked out perfectly so far. After being contacted, she had asked the game's management to create the impression that the event winner, herself, was hiding a secret method to get stronger faster. Wayne had played a significant role in spreading rumors in the public forums after their last encounter. As she had hoped, he had gone around telling everyone about how she had killed him, fueling curiosity among players. This combination of rumors and misinformation had caused players to flock to the Great Liba Forest. Rare had taken advantage of this situation to turn the forest into a pseudo-dungeon. She had the engineer ants create weapons and equipment from the low-tier metals collected in the mines, which were then scattered throughout the forest for players to find. Suguru checked in about the current setup of the forest, asking if it was to her liking. Rare was satisfied for the most part, but she cautioned Suguru to keep the difficulty balanced. If things become too hard, players might give up too quickly, since the game also has a penalty for dying. Some players will get some XP and loot, and in return, she would gain a lot of XP by having her subordinates kill them, calling it a win-win situation for her and the other players. She realized that she had essentially turned the game into a dungeon keeper simulator. She gained a large amount of XP thanks to the advertisements, so she decided to just see where this is going. She knew that as more players came to the forest, they would eventually seek her out as the final boss. She needed to prepare something special for when that time came, a surprise ace up her sleeve. Misunderstanding her thoughts, Carrie suggested hiding a knife to catch players off guard. Rare was amused and then remembered what she had been thinking. The game's reincarnation system, which allowed players to change races under certain conditions, like becoming a vampire subordinate to reincarnate as a squire zombie. There are many ways to achieve it, and Rare thought of using the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary alchemy item said to grant immortality and turn lead into gold. She wondered if they could use it to reincarnate into another race. Intrigued by this, Carrie suggested they search for it, but Rare had no need. The stone didn't exist in nature, and she intended to create one herself. She was confident that her alchemy skill, magnum opus, which had been used to create Yoroizaka and Kinzaki, would be enough to craft it. As long as she knew the recipe, she could use the skill even if the result is unknown. She had already found a recipe close to the Philosopher's Stone, involving ingredients like mercury, sulfur, iron, and a monster heart. The only missing ingredient was likely something related to potassium carbonate, in other words, ashes. The ingredients would unlock after she had come in contact with it. And since the ashes from burned forest didn't work, she wondered if she needed it to be made from special material. As she was pondering the last ingredient, Marion called in with a report. Rare listened intently and responded that she's about to join her on site. Using her summon caster skill, she teleported to Marion's location, bringing Dias and Carrie with her. She arrived clad in her black armor and greeted Marion and Ginka, who were both happy to see her. Dias asked Rare where they were, to which Rare explained that they were now in the Toli Forest, north of the Great Liba Forest, and showed Dias a map, her prize for winning the recent event. She had collected all the materials available in the Great Liba Forest and had asked Marion and Ginka to scout new areas for different resources. Now that they were in unexplored territory, she remarked with a smile that it finally felt like she was playing an RPG. Dias then proposed to be the vanguard, ensuring that no harm would come her way as they ventured deeper into this new area. With Dias leading the way, Rare's group ventured deeper into the new forest. After some scouting, Dias reported back to Rare after spotting enemies. The forest was filled with undead, and based on their armor, Dias suspected some of them might be his former comrades. This revelation intrigued Rare and wondered if there was also a massive undead unbreak. She began to consider that this forest might have once been intended as a place to spawn powerful monsters, similar to what could have happened in the Liba Forest. Rare theorized that both forests were meant for powerful creatures like Suguru and Dias, who could have been intended as raid bosses to fight for dominance. If the undead in this forest had won whatever battle took place here, it was fortunate for her. There was an opportunity to subjugate the boss of these undead and add them to her growing army. She instructed Dias to bring her the undead army as a gift, to which he obediently agreed. The group proceeded cautiously through the forest, avoiding battles with the undead to keep them alive for future use. But Rare soon grew bored. As efficient as her subordinates were at handling things without her, it left her with little to do. Carrie, Dias, and Suguru were all managing their tasks so well that Rare felt like she was becoming less active in the game. Lost in thought, she was suddenly hit by sunlight, which irritated her due to her albinism trait. She quickly donned her helmet, completing her full black armor look once again. Suddenly, Carrie shouted and alerted her to danger. Before it could touch her, Dias swiftly slashed it, revealing it was a root from a nearby tree. Rare was startled, but soon realized that the trees around them were disguised monsters. It was only now that they had become active, likely triggered by the sunlight. The group found themselves surrounded by them, and Dias noted that there hadn't been any undead for a while. As trees began to attack, Rare quickly analyzed the situation, realizing that this might be a forest where the trees were active during the day while the undead took over at night. Marion asked what they should do, as the trees kept coming no matter how many they defeated. Rare suspected the trees were respawning, which raised the possibility that they were under someone's control, just as her NPC subordinates could respawn through her subordinate skill. Suddenly, she wondered if she could use subordinate skill to them, just as she had done with the ants. She decided to give it a try, and to her surprise, it worked. She successfully tamed one of the tree monsters, which is called Camphor-Trant. Realizing that the Trants didn't have a master to respawn them, Rare figured out that there were simply a lot of them scattered throughout the forest. She decided to tame as many as she could and bring them back to the Great Liba Forest. After what felt like an exhausting process, Rare finally managed to gather all the Trants they could handle. With the sun setting, she wanted to wrap things up quickly while Dias informed her that he had found a place where the undead were becoming more active. Rare instructed him to guide her there, and they soon arrived at a massive tree with undead roaming around. One figure held a sword, wore broken armor, and seemed stronger than the rest, to which Dias suspected that he might be a former comrade. As Rare approached it, the undead warrior seemed to exude an aura that debuffed the surrounding enemies, indicating he was of a higher rank than Dias. Excited by the challenge, Rare drew her sword, and the undead warrior did the same. She launched the first swing, but the undead dodged it easily. It then went for the attack, but Rare was able to deflect. They continued to exchange blows, and Rare quickly realized that this was no ordinary enemy. He was likely the boss of the undead in this forest. Testing his strength further, she used magic in the middle of their sword fight, casting a flare arrow that sent an explosion. The undead emerged unscathed, so she followed it with Thunderbolt, which struck the unarmored part of its knee, forcing him to kneel. Rare then pointed her sword at him, demanding his submission. And after a moment, a system message confirmed that she gained her new subordinate, Terror Knight Sieg. Dias recognized him, but Rare wasn't able to understand what he was saying. She then added him as a friend, and he was now able to explain that he was a captain of the Third Knight Order from their former kingdom, making him Dias Jr. As they exchanged information, Sieg explained that back in their time, there had only been one kingdom on the continent, a far cry from the 6 kingdoms that now ruled. Rare was fascinated by this revelation, realizing that the game's world had a hidden past that hadn't been publicly revealed. It seemed that the unified kingdom had fallen due to a plot by top officials, leading to the rise of the current 6 kingdoms over its ruins. Learning of this, Dias was filled with fury and expressed his hatred for the 6 kingdoms, vowing to make them pay for what they had done. Seeing his reaction, Rare asked Sieg if he felt the same. Sieg explained he didn't, but since he had pledged loyalty to the kingdom, he vowed to avenge his men and destroy the now 6 kingdoms, and also pledged his sword to Rare to achieve it. Players often seek a goal in a game, but this game lacks a clear objective. This game was designed to grow yourself by completing short quests generated by AI, but there are many players who play with other goals in mind. She felt it's not fair that everyone has a goal, and she realized she had finally found one. She then declared that their new objective is to destroy the 6 kingdoms, and her subordinates all knelt in agreement, pledging their loyalty to her. With a new objective in place, Rare planned to expand her dominion just as she had done in the monster territory. She intended to swallow up human-settled areas first, and the kingdoms would eventually crumble. Dias and Sieg agreed, believing that Rare was the rightful ruler to lead this new age. But before expanding her reach beyond the forest, Rare knew they had to take control of the entire Toli forest, starting with the trance. Although Dias cautioned that subjugating them could take time, Rare was confident that she could handle it, turning her gaze to the massive tree behind her and wondered aloud if it was just an ordinary tree after all. As Rare stood before the massive tree, Carrie asked if there was something special about it. Rare didn't answer immediately, but instead used her charm skill on it. The tree's leaves began to rustle in response, while Rare sensed resistance coming from it. She realized that the massive tree was also Treant, and decided to use control followed by subordinate. She successfully tamed it and discovered that it was an elder camp for Treant. She continued to explore its details when suddenly, a new notification caught her off guard. The system message stated that her follower has fulfilled a condition for reincarnation, and she may spend 5,000 XP for it to reincarnate. Rare was stunned. Reincarnation was something she had heard about, but she hadn't expected it to be possible for one of her followers before herself. And the cost, 5,000 experience points, was steep, even for her. After contemplating whether it was worth it, she decided to go through with it. The tree began to glow as the reincarnation process initiated. The light was so bright that it left everyone in awe. As the transformation completed, the tree had evolved into something far more powerful, a world tree. Rare was speechless for a moment, and just as she was processing what had happened, another system message appeared, offering the chance to reincarnate into a high elf for only 200 experience points. She was initially confused but quickly realized that this offer was meant for her. The experience point cost was also high, but it was negligible compared to what the world tree had required, so she couldn't pass it up. She accepted the offer and triggered her own reincarnation process. In a flash of light, Rare emerged from the smoke as a high elf, leaving her subordinates in awe. Her physical appearance had changed. Her hair and ears were longer, and she radiated an even stronger beauty than before. Her racial traits, including her already notable beauty, have been further enhanced, making her favorability with NPCs even greater. After taking a moment to explain everything to her companions, Rare decided that it was time to return to their base. She left the management of the Toli Forest to the newly reincarnated World Tree, confident in its ability to oversee the area. She then asked Sieg to come with them, and the two undead began to reminisce about their days. Rare was confused by their reaction, and she suddenly remembered to ask the World Tree for one of its branches. Back at their base, everyone marveled at the branch's size. It was enormous, so they could experiment with various creations. Remy soon approached and handed Rare a flask. She was initially in charge of producing various items, but she's also working as a merchant in a nearby town to gather information. Rare looked at the flask that contained the ashes of the world tree. She had tasked Remy with producing these ashes, suspecting that they were the key to creating the Philosopher's Stone. Confirming her suspicions, the last ingredient was finally unlocked, a tray and ashes. She noticed that the name is different, but decided to give it a try. She casted magnum opus, causing bright light to fill the room. When it subsided, a stone appeared in Rare's hand, the Philosopher's Stone. According to its description, the Philosopher's Stone had the ability to raise the user's rank by 2 levels. Though the description felt vague, she was eager to test its effects. Dias then volunteered to be the test subject. As an undead, he didn't grow stronger with age, and it would be a game changer if it worked on him. She handed the Philosopher's Stone to Dias, and the moment he touched it, a new message appeared asking her permission for Dias to reincarnate into Death Knight or Death Lord. Realizing the effects, Rare proceeded with the Death Lord while Dias braced himself. Dias had successfully reincarnated into a Death Lord, leaving him astonished. He could feel his newfound strength, even greater than when he had been alive. Rare noted that the experiment had worked and his appearance had also been upgraded. Just as they were processing the change, Remy arrived with her report. Remy had completed her analysis of the synthesis process for the Philosopher's Stones and confirmed that they could be mass-produced under the same conditions. This news excited Rare, and without hesitation, she decided to use one of the stones herself. But something unexpected happened. The system displayed a message that a greater Philosopher's Stone has been used, leaving Rare confused. Before she could fully process this, a flood of new options appeared on her screen. She could now choose to reincarnate into Living Spirit, Dark Elf, Spirit Lord, Demon Spirit, and a Demon Lord. Rare was overwhelmed and tried to make sense of it all first. She realized that she hadn't created just any Philosopher's Stone, likely due to the high-grade materials she had used. The reincarnation options varied significantly, each offering something unique. The Living Spirit seemed to be an evolution from her current form as a High Elf, with the Spirit Lord being an even higher form. On the other hand, the Demon Lord path seemed to be a special option that had only appeared under specific conditions, and it required as many experience points as the World Tree's reincarnation had. After considering her choices, Rare decided to go with the Demon Lord path. If she were to rule over monsters, the title of Demon Lord seemed fitting, and it had also piqued her interest. When she finally chose it, a blinding light enveloped her as the process began, and when the light faded, Rare emerged with a striking new appearance, marking her as a Demon Lord. Her new racial traits included wings, which granted her the ability to fly, and horns, which gave her increased resistance and success rates when using mental magic. She had also unlocked a new trait and skill, which is demonic eyes. As everyone was in awe, Carrie pointed out that her ears had shortened, and Suguru admired the pure white wings that had grown from her back, giving her a divine appearance. Rare was pleased with her new abilities, but she realized that her flashy appearance would make it difficult to move around in public without drawing attention. She decided that she would need to keep a low profile for a while to avoid suspicion. Suddenly, a voice echoed throughout the room, announcing a significant event. The system had transmitted a message to all players and NPCs with specific skills. A special being of calamity, a Demon Lord, has been born. This sudden message leaves Rare confused. At the same time, in the human territory, high-ranking officials were gathered in disbelief. The news of a new enemy of humanity had spread quickly.